This is 9/11 Freefall.
Welcome to 9/11 Freefall. I'm the host, Andy Steele. My guests tonight are members of a club at ASU that focuses on 9/11 truth, and mainly 9/11 science truth. Features a lot of work from architects and engineers for 9/11 truth. And they're going to be talking about some of the stuff that they do, also 9/11 truth from their own perspective and their own experiences. Some of these guys were in their teen years when 9/11 happened. Some of them are students, some of them are former students, but they're interesting to listen to and get their take on things. And they were interviewed. At least one of them was interviewed for an article that USA Today put out in the run-up to the Super Bowl, because apparently Seahawks coach Pete Caroll is awake to some of the 9/11 truth evidence. There's a famous article about how he peppered a 4-star general or 5-star general, whatever stars, with questions about 9/11 when he met him at one point. So they were going at it from that angle, but they represented it well, like I say in the interview. And yeah, I'm never big when the media throws that term conspiracy theorist around. I kind of consider that a slur, but beyond that, I think it was well represented. So I'm going to play that interview with those guys in just a few moments. Before I do, though, I want to make an announcement. Richard Gage is going to be speaking at a few places in Pennsylvania coming up next month. March the 21st, he's going to be at the 4 Points by Sheraton in Scranton, Pennsylvania. It's going to be at 2 o'clock. So you can check that out. And if you can't make that one, he's going to be in Newfoundland, at the Sanctuary Church of Newfoundland on Sunday, March 22nd. That's the next day, 2 o'clock. So, you can see him there. The name of the tour is 9/11 Truth, America is Ready. It's time to talk about it. And I think that's a really good title, because I think America is ready. I think it is time to talk about it. Now, obviously, for some of us, the time came a long time ago. That's why you're listening to this show. That's why you're already awake to the evidence proving that buildings 1, 2, and 7 of the World Trade Center complex were brought down in controlled demolitions on that day. But for some people, it's been a longer journey. For some people, they can't begin to wrap their minds around that until they see other things take place, until they see other consequences of the post-9/11 world take form. And you can see that in the constant warfare, in the surveillance state, the increasing loss of civil liberties at home. And it's forcing people to have to re-examine 9/11, to remember back to the friends and colleagues that they had who were talking about Building 7, who they may have previously dismissed. So it's important for you out in the listening audience to go to these events if you can, even if it's a few hours away from you. As long as the weather's good, go out and take the drive. But also, beyond being important for you to see it, it's important for those around you to see it. So my challenge to you out there is to bring a friend, bring somebody you've been talking to about this evidence for a long time, and say, hey, look, it's a Saturday afternoon. What else are you doing on Saturday afternoon? Weekends were meant for doing interesting things. Why don't you go listen to this guy speak about the stuff I've been telling you about for years? He's been an architect for decades. And make an afternoon out of it. Go get some lunch, but get their reaction. So that's the challenge. Again, bring somebody, bring many people if you can, but go out there and see these events. So again, March 21st in Scranton and March 22nd in Newfoundland, Pennsylvania. Be there or be square. All right, what we're going to do now is what we do every week. We're going to take 10 seconds of silence to remember the victims of 9/11 and their families and all the people who died in the wars that followed 9/11. We're going to do that beginning now. And that is 10 seconds. am joined today by four guys who are part of a 9/11 Truth Club at Arizona State University. And a few weeks ago, they were interviewed by USA Today talking about 9/11 Truth in relation to the Super Bowl. They're here today to talk about that, among other things. Their names are Steve Cohn, Edward Martinez, Dorian Demetrulius, and Raj Raghavendra. Guys, welcome to 9/11 Freefall.
Thanks, Andy.
So, guys, I want you each to go down through the line and introduce yourselves to the audience. Tell them your name, what you're studying, and how did you wake up to the 9/11 controlled demolition evidence. Steve, since you're a veteran here on the show, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. I'm a volunteer in the Tempe community, Tempe, Arizona. So I'm not a student, but I just support the club in whatever way I can because I think the cause is the most important cause out there right now. This is the most pressing issue that our world faces. And so I'm just a volunteer member for the club, and I have an electrical engineering degree from the University of Arkansas. So that's me.
How did you wake up to the 9/11 evidence? Obviously, being an engineer, you've got to look at this issue even more closely than some people might, right?
Sure. For me, I first woke up watching the movie Zeitgeist, and then I watched Loose Change, and just my curiosity grew from there. And when I came across the architects and engineers who were actually proving it scientifically, examining the evidence of the explosives of the Twin Towers and the Building 7. So that was really convincing for me once I came across their videos, and they really analyze it from all angles. And so ever since then, I've just been on a mission to get the truth out.
All right, Edward, same questions. Tell us about yourself. What are you studying, and how did you wake up to 9/11?
I'm actually an English literature major. I don't, a lot of the individuals in the club are more so backgrounded in the sciences and physics. But I myself, I'm on the other end of the spectrum. I'm an English lit major, but I was 17 when 9/11 happened, and so it coincided with a time in my life in which I was blossoming into exploring life itself, everything, not just politics and the more accurate circumstances behind such politics which govern my life behind the scenes, everything in general, metaphysics. So it happened. The timing of it was that it happened at a time in my life where I was blossoming into exploring life itself, society, like I said, politics, everything in general. And so initially, I was perplexed. It struck me as really bizarre that the Twin Towers themselves fell immediately, that expediently, that uniformly by what was supposed to be the impact of commercial airliners and the explosion of their jet fuel, like 110 stories up. And initially, being that everybody went with it, we got hit with this so fast. I didn't pay it too much mind. But as time developed, and as I continued to explore life itself, as I said, in this time of my life, it just got increasingly more stark and starkly implausible, just completely unrealistic, scientifically impossible as to what was being conjectured as the official story. And so with all that going on, I was investigating that, learning more into that, watching a lot of video documentaries about that, and finding out about more on top of that. So 9/11 was essentially the catalyzing event that opened my eyes to everything. It's with what I essentially really started going down that proverbial rabbit hole. So it was stuff like stuff like that. It was video documentaries like Zeitgeist, Loose Change. It was the exact same kind of thing. It's just it happened to coincide in that time in my life where I was doing such already naturally, really blossoming out into exploring life itself and big time the politics and the circumstances behind which govern my life.
And I should ask you guys this too, Edward. What year are you in college?
I'm a senior.
You're a senior. You know, when I was an English major too. I was English creative writing.
Yeah, I have a big. Sorry to interrupt, but I have a big concentration in creative writing. So that was I've taken a lot of creative writing classes myself.
And I think that background's important because you study art, essentially. I mean, literature and creative writing is a form of art, and art is made up of human spirit, and part of this battle is understanding the human spirit. Now, when I was your age and I was in your same position, we didn't have loose change in zeitgeist. What we had was Fox News telling us that they attacked us because of our freedom. So we've come a long way in my whole adult life now, but congratulations for waking up to this. Dorian, same questions. What year are you? How did you wake up to 9/11 truth? And what are you studying?
Well, actually, I'm currently independently studying mechanical engineering. That's just through my interests of alternative energy or renewable energy, and combining that with my hobby of building mopeds. But I have some background in construction. My dad has been in construction for a long time. Growing up, I've been around a lot of the big commercial projects that he's been on. I've worked as an electrician on large-scale commercial projects. I have a fair bit of knowledge of building codes and how things are built. And I guess it kind of started, with an old friend of mine from high school who we've had, many philosophical conversations and discussions about geopolitics and the truth about what's really going on in the world. And he recommended Zeitgeist. And some time went by after having watched that, and I finally started rubbing some brain cells together, and I thought to look back at the video of World Trade Center 7 coming down. And upon reviewing that and just kind of taking the initiative to kind of explore on my own just a little bit instead of letting a documentary tell me what to think, I started looking at this and I was just like, wait a second, how can a building drop with perfect symmetry to the ground and accelerate like it looks like it's moving, appears to be accelerating? I just remember looking at this and thinking, there's no way a fire can do that. Who believes that? And then, it just leads, one question, the answer to one question leads to more questions, like the rubble pile smoldering for months after the attacks happened, and like finding amalgamated chunks of steel and concrete fused together, like where does the heat come from to do that? How do people not think there was a chemical agent involved? That's so there's just too many loose ends. I was actually just taking a virtual tour of the 9/11 Memorial Museum, and it's a total propaganda museum, is what that thing is. It's very, very misleading. They don't explain things about World Trade Center 7, for example. It doesn't seem to be much mention of that building in the museum from what I saw.
Right. Now, I pardon me if you said so. I think I missed it, though. What year are you in college?
I actually attended at ASU many years ago. I was studying as a photojournalist major, but I changed directions several times, and now I'm just currently studying mechanical engineering, but that's like just an independent study or combined with my interest in alternative energy and sustainability. But that's just an independent study.
Cool. And now, Raj, same questions. How did you wake up to 9/11? What year are you, and what are you studying?
I am doing my master's in computer engineering. I joined ASU in last fall. And when I was in India, my friend said that this was an inside job, so I thought that how can it be, and people would say anything. But when I saw Steele, I saw Zeitgeist, and that made me think about it really hard. And after that, I looked up into it on the internet from whatever the evidence were, and it was really eye-opening for me. So the facts which were stated earlier, like the steel melting, molten steel was found, and the temperature of the jet fuel could not reach so high so as to burn molten steel. The building falling at free free fall, which is not at all possible except when it is a controlled demolition. The central columns being cut. A plane cannot cause the central column to be cut like in the fashion in which it was present. So all this made me realize that this is an inside job.
Now, I'm curious because, you've got a unique perspective. I've never had anybody from India on the show here. What's the reaction of people in India when you talk to them about this? Are they as hostile acting as the people on TV, at least, are when you mention these evidence and this issue?
No, nothing about that. People there usually are like people here, and they believe the official story like I was believing it before realizing it. But I think that at least they don't have that emotional attachment to this event, so they are more likely to take it more objectively than people here.
Very good. Now, again, you guys did something really great this week. Even they were covering Pete Caroll. Apparently, Pete Carroll's aware of some of this stuff, and they were going at it from that angle, relating 9/11 truth to the Super Bowl. And the Super Bowl coach, too bad he didn't win in the end there. But tell us how this happened. How did you guys end up in USA Today? And I'll just open this up to the floor to anyone who wants to begin.
Yeah, well, Eddie, do you want to tell them about the article about us marching in the parade and how this reporter found us?
Yes. Okay, so what happened is, for the second consecutive year, us as the ASU 9/11 Studies and Outreach Student Club marched in the 2014 Homecoming Parade, which is a big deal because that's a lot of people firsthand. That's a lot of people that are seeing our banners, seeing a big, well-illustrated banner saying, "Did you know a third tower fell on 9/11?" and things as such. So it's huge because it's really effective. It's really effective in waking up a lot of people really quick. So what happened is, I made a nice, lengthy, decently detailed post about it on my Facebook page. What happened is that post ended up making some of the body of an article, along with co-authorship by Steve Cohn, and staff of 911truthoutreach.org. So that essentially became an article on 911truthoutreach.org about us marching in the homecoming parade, as well as my sentiments about how that is affecting actual societal change. And so what happened was, Jackie Pepper, whom is reporting for USA Today, whom apparently was doing investigation on Pete Caroll's rumored advocacy of the 9/11 Truth movement, read the article. She read the article, so she looked up the ASU 9/11 Studies and Outreach Club, set up an interview. It was Martin Rajs, the USA Today reporter Martin Rajs, who from there ended up interviewing several members of the 9/11 ASU Studies and Outreach Club, and so from there, it blossomed into the article, which is which got into USA Today.
So what was the interview like? I mean, did you guys feel that you were being, set up to look foolish? Sometimes I've seen reporters do this. But what kind of feeling did you get from the reporter as you guys were being interviewed?
That's a great point, Andy. This is Steve Cohn here, and of the callers on today, or of the guests on the show today, I'm the only one who was in the room being interviewed with USA Today. And I can tell you that we were quoted accurately. They made us sound articulate. They cut out a couple of moments where we might have mumbled. So actually, I'll give them credit. They did quote us accurately. However, they did edit out anytime we tried to include in one of our responses, if we tried to include a scientific fact about the way the Twin Towers fell, the physics or the chemistry that the 2,300 architects and engineers are talking about. When we tried to mention that, they pretty much edited those out, which, you know what? I can understand why. because the piece was in the sports section, but at the same time, it is pretty typical.
Yeah, and you've got to be careful sometimes. Like I said, I think you guys got a fair shot from the reporter. I don't like them using the word conspiracy theorist when you're talking about the experts at AE 9/11 Truth. I mean, we got some people, like our chairman of the board has got over 50 years of experience there. He's not a conspiracy theorist. He's a guy who knows something. And you wouldn't take a doctor that's warning the public about some public health concern if he's got decades of experience and call him a conspiracy theorist. But beyond that, I think it came out good. But something I've seen in the past is when the Loose Change guys were interviewed by some ABC News show, that some late night, it might have been Nightline or something like that. They were interviewed for 20 minutes, and I was there. I witnessed the interview because it was at some event, and not only did I witness the interview, but so did 20 other people who stood around in a circle with cameras facing them and capturing the whole interview, and they ended up editing it down to 2 minutes and only just took clips where the guys might have tripped in their words or just, they didn't represent the interview for what it was. They didn't include any of their points in it. That was a hit piece from beginning to end. And so I had learned from that when I went on my local news, I had a camera watching and filming, and the guy asked me if I turn off my camera, and I said no, and I made up some excuse that I have to have this to my group, to AE. They're making me do this. They have to have it documented, and so I got to keep it on, and that made it harder for them to selectively edit it and try to make me look crazy, and they couldn't, because I got it on YouTube first. So that's something that I want to pass on to you fellas and also to the audience on how to avoid such problems in the future.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Actually, Andy, that is a good point. You were actually using the video recorder?
Yeah, this was a video recorder because this was it was a press conference that AE 9/11 Truth was doing on the 10th anniversary. There were lots of people doing this across the country in front of courthouses, federal buildings. I happened to get on TV. I don't know why. I think it was just luck. They decided that there wasn't much going on that day and they would check it out. So I had the camera there, but that is a very handy tool. You document the entire conversation so that if they misrepresent you, you can show the proof, and you don't need to go through an editor to get it out to the masses, to the people who care about this. You can just put it on the internet yourself.
We actually did bring a voice recorder into the interview with us, and with ASU, with USA Today's, with their blessing, they let us record the entire interview and the entire time that we were in the room. So they were fair in that regard, for sure.
There you go. And so that's good. And why shouldn't they? Because if they're going to record you and be accurate in their reporting, they shouldn't be afraid of you recording the whole encounter as well. So, I mean, we've been stung in the past by misrepresentation and hit pieces and things like that, but I think that climate is changing a little bit as time passes here, and we're starting to get more fair and accurate coverage of our view and just on the kind of people that we are. Obviously, you guys are very reputable, smart guys. I can hear you very articulate. So, that's how you should be represented. And that's how the experts at AE 9/11 Truth should be represented for being the experts that they are. Now, what kind of outreach have you guys done with your club at ASU? Tell us more about it and the kind of activities that you partake in.
Right now, the meat of it is we set up it's what we call the Truth booth. Is we have a nice booth we set up with pretty excellent AE banners. The full illustrations, the breakdown, as well as say 9/11 science DVDs, the likes. So that we set up at the ASU main campus. So I would say the meat of it is actually setting up a decent sized booth, in of which covered with big, well illustrated, really well making point banners, as well as sign-up sheets, DVDs, things as such. And other thing we've gotten into doing, which I really want to get into more, is bannering at different places in town, say during different events or at times when certain places are really are really busy, really happening with people. Say like on a weekend, like a Friday or Saturday night, on a really happening part of town, say close by the actual campus or otherwise. So that's something I want to get into more. Is actually bannering at different places across town where we can be seen by a lot of people.
Now, is there, because I noticed this, that there's, not just on college campuses, but in the greater world, there's certain topics that it's okay to care about, that they even promote you caring about. Maybe there's an agenda attached to it, or maybe it's just their little safe topics that aren't going to hurt anybody too much and nobody can object to, like, save the earth. Well, who doesn't want to save the earth, So that's something you can feel good about yourself wanting to do, and a lot of people flock under that banner and champion that cause, but obviously 9/11 Truth is not a cause like that. So do you guys run into any issues with the university or on campus with championing this issue?
We've actually just had a really positive encounter with the ASU police. I think Steve can talk about that more, because he was actually there for it.
Sure, I want to hear about this, the ASU police.
Well, we've had several encounters, all positive. Like I said, we're an officially licensed and registered ASU student club, and with over 200 members that have signed up, roughly 30 active members. And recently, we did have the police happen to be passing by our booth, two of them partners, and they looped around and were reading our banners, our Rethink 9/11 banners, and basically finding out about Building 7 for the first time. That's what caught their attention. And so we were talking for a while and basically explaining that there are a lot of these questions out there, and that we're good guys on campus. We're just bringing up good points, and most importantly, that the police, even though they've been getting a lot of negative press lately, I reminded them that in our view, the police are not the bad guys. They're the ones that they're the heroes of the day, especially the ones that were running into the towers when everyone else was running for their lives. And so I guess they felt like a real connection with us, and they offered us protection anytime should we do encounter trouble on campus. And so we've made an ally in that regard. But yeah, we're more than welcome on campus. So far, we haven't encountered any infiltration or the higher ups telling us we can't be here or anything like that, because we come with a scientific approach, and we focus on asking questions rather than focus on the conspiracy. So,
and I was going to say, this is Dorian. We primarily were setting up outside of the MU, where there's a lot of other clubs that set up, and
essentially the hub of the university. It's like the main square.
Yeah, and you get some of the activists, like pro-life activists, and so there's a lot of flyer pushing going on in that area. And I guess some people kind of tend to ignore those things when they're moving through there. So we started setting up outside the engineering and physics buildings, and we've gotten a lot warmer response from people there. Not only the students, but also the faculty have been anonymously coming by and giving us the thumbs up and encouraging us to be out there. So it's interesting to see in that location outside the physics building how many people there are that it's not hard to explain to them. There's something suspicious about how the Twin Towers crumble so rapidly when you have girders and trusses that weigh thousands of tons being ejected horizontally at 70 miles an hour. That's got to take an unexplained amount of force. And a lot of the engineering students that I talked to agree there's something weird going on with it there.
And I was going to ask you guys about that, about outreach to faculty. What you're doing is right along the lines of what I always advocate is focusing on the people that matter. And the engineering and architectural faculties of any university are going to be the most important in our aspect of 9/11 truth that we focus on here. And I'm going to ask you guys to elaborate on that, on outreaches to faculty and some of the things, some of the exchanges that have been made with that regard and your experiences.
Steve here. I got a couple of stories. For the most part, professors are not willing to touch the subject. We've had, like Dorian said, we've had a couple of professors agree with us openly, and we've had probably a dozen or more come and say that they agree with us, but but anonymously, without wanting to actually help the club or, give any details of their support. They just say, y'all, good job being out here, or I already agree with you, but won't want to, get involved with this issue. Recently, I came across perhaps the most famous professor at Arizona State. His name is Lawrence Krauss, and he is a famous astrophysicist who wrote the book A Universe from Nothing. And saw him walking past the booth, kind of chased him down, handed him a flyer, told him I'm a big fan. And we sent him an email as a club, and he wrote back that he wasn't interested in the topic, and basically thanks but no thanks, without giving any details on we only were asking him to look at physics issues, and he didn't respond to any of our specific questions or what have you. So mostly been ignored by the faculty, which is not surprising. Same thing around the country.
It's kind of a miracle that they even allowed us to have a club, because I think there is some amount of faculty endorsement you have to have in order to have a student club. So I think we're blessed just to have that. Right. And basically to start a student club, though, you don't have to have any professors sign off on it, right? You guys just can run it yourself.
No, here we do. Every school is different, but at ASU you have to have a faculty member. And we are lucky enough to have one, a man named Bill Swayze, who is in the dance department here at ASU, and he is a brave man with tenure, and feels that that this topic is important and should be on campus. So we owe him a lot for our existence.
That's right. So many people are so afraid of the peer pressure and what ramifications are going to happen if you talk about this. And I don't know who it was, so I'll say it was Mark Twain. Actually, I think it was Mark Twain. I'm not certain, though, who said something to the effect that some of the things I worried about most in life never happened. So, you spend all this time worrying about something, most times they won't come true. And I think a lot of these control systems just work from people self-censoring out of fear of a consequence, when really the consequence is not going to be as major as they think. And I think that you guys right now, doing what you're doing, need to succeed. You need to succeed in whatever fields that you guys pursue, because then you'll be the leaders in those fields. And because you've already demonstrated that you're fearless now, you'll continue that into adulthood, and you guys will be the backbone of the future. And when I say that, I'm not just you throwing words out there. I mean, you really will be the backbone of the future. You will have the backbones when other people don't have the backbones. Now, Raj, I want to ask you, being a foreign student, you have a unique perspective on this. Do you find it any more difficult, less difficult, talking to people about 9/11 truth here in America, being part of this movement, since you aren't from the United States?
Actually, I have come across a couple of situations where, one person, I was explaining the facts to him, and he was all watery-eyed, and he was asking me that, where were you when the event was happening, and he was there watching live on the TV and all that stuff. So it's difficult when someone is so emotionally charged to explain the facts to that person. One another incident was that I was explaining something to a woman, and I was explaining the building could not fall into its own footprint without the center columns being cut. And after all the explanations, she was like, "Oh, so the terrorists cut the central columns too." So it's difficult to reason when you have faith in something. I think that here people have faith in the official stories, which people back there don't have. They are more objective, and if you explain something to them, they will be like open to your explanations. But when you have faith, reasoning fails there. So like there has been incidences like this. So yeah.
I would like to comment from
Sure.
in my experience when I was in high school. Is when September 11th happened, and I was working at Kmart as a cashier. And I remember they had lots of little impulse items, flags and other nationalistic things for, the customers. When they'd come up to my cashier, they would express all this emotion about how they want to show patriotism and buying these little knick-knack flags and things. And I said, hey, these things are made in China, and someone's capitalizing on your emotions. And this one lady, I think, like, she had, I think I may have caused her to have an awakening by saying that, but like, I certainly, I feel that's something that's been attached to my notions about September 11th, ever since 2001, is that I can see that people are profiteering off of this terrible suffering, and I won't stand for it. That's why I'm involved with this.
Obviously, you guys are young, and you were young when it happened, but as time passes, the people in college are just going to be having been younger and younger when 9/11 happened, to the point where they'll have been born after it happened and not even remember it. So how do you keep the topic fresh in the minds of students who, were either very small or weren't born at all when 9/11 took place?
And that, that's another good question in relation to people's emotional ties to it. We've noticed that the younger kids are less emotionally indoctrinated and easier to make a persuasive argument to.
That's true. It is, but do you think that there's any problem in them, because they're less emotionally indoctrinated, that they aren't going to have the fire that we would have? Like, perfect case in point, when I was a kid, the JFK movie came out, the Oliver Stone movie, and my mom was sort of a JFK truther throughout the years, and we rented it from Blockbuster, and I sat for the 3 hours and I watched it with her, and she was very, very upset and very resolved afterwards watching it. And I watched it, and I came to the conclusion it was probably some kind, the government probably had something to do with it, but I think wrestling was on the next hour, and that's what I was thinking about an hour later. I didn't really care that much, just because it wasn't my life, it wasn't my history. I mean, it was my country's history, but it wasn't my own personal experience. And so I didn't really even start paying attention to this kind of stuff until after 9/11 happened. So how do we prevent that from happening to the younger generations coming up and keep this as something that they're passionate about and want to do something about?
Well, and if I can field that question, I just wanted to say that since beginning my own personal research into the subject, coming across things like the X-Files spin-off, the Lone Gunman episode, the pilot episode, which depicts the commercial airlines being hacked into and making their autopilot remote control and crash into the trade centers. And throughout that episode, there's all these JFK-related references. And it's just kind of interesting because there's a documentary I like to recommend to everyone. It's called All Wars Are Bankers' Wars. It's just a YouTube video that you can find. But the ties between JFK and I, even though JFK is not from my generation, I still feel that he's a hero, and I feel an emotional connection in that, even though that's not my generation, because it's all, when you can show the correlation and the trend in these methods of tyranny, it's not confined to one generation. This is something that's we're being fooled over and over and over, and if people don't recognize history, then it's just going to keep happening.
You know what, Andy? I wanted to, as far as the question of how to keep younger and younger generations invigorated about 9/11 truth, about the important implications of everything, is honestly I feel exactly what we're doing, which is to be out there exposing the elements that are unknown in the mainstream, that are repressed, because it's as even younger and younger generations find out things like the fact a 47-story steel-frame skyscraper imploded on 9/11 World Trade Center 7, as even younger and younger generations find out about this, one, it comes with an indignation. Two, it's in of itself exactly what fires people up to go to about it in general, about 9/11, because you realize you've been lied to, and you realize the implications, or that leads to realizing the implications of what that's for, of how that's being used against you, how of such a horrific, sinister event catalyzing more horror and sinister private agendas. So I feel the way to continue to invigorate younger and even younger generations whom are more emotionally detached from 9/11 is simply to continue doing exactly what we're doing, which is to do the outreach of exposing these lies, of exposing these circumstances, which enlighten individuals to realize, one, it's a lie. The official story is a huge lie. And then two, the implication, which leads to the implications of what that means. So I feel the way to do that is exactly what we're doing already.
Yeah, you're right. And you just keep it alive in the public's eye, and you keep on creating that resistance wherever you can. And write down stuff. Record your thoughts, record your voice, record everything that you can record for this movement. Even if people don't hear you immediately, somewhere down the line they might. I'm reading somebody's little pamphlet about issues from the 1930s, unrelated to 9/11, because of course it didn't happen yet, but just about another issue right now, and I feel an immediate connection with this person. He writes exactly the way I do and explains arguments the same way that I do, and it's almost like I call it mental time traveling. And, you're not in a literal sense, but it almost feels like when you can connect with people, like you're all standing in the same room and sharing notes, and you're taking something from them, but you're also learning something and putting in a bigger piece of the puzzle, because you can take these same things that this person is talking about from the 1930s, these same concepts, the same motivations in politics and in the human spirit, and apply them to now. They don't really change. People don't change throughout time. So when you do that, you're leaving your mark, and you're communicating with the future too. So yeah, you guys got it right on. Anything you can do is what you should be doing. A million small things done well every day is going to be what wins this war for us. And you guys are proof of that. Now, I was going through some university radio stations earlier for some other AE work, and I noticed that many don't even feature talk radio on their stations, just music. And this reminds me back to when I was in college. They would have this TV network playing in the dining hall that would just show very, very superficial news. Just your basic, some silly thing about the president that day, and then they would show a bunch of college students making the world's biggest jello mold and swimming in it or something. And it just seems that young people's energy is focused by this culture into ridiculous, silly things. Either that or doing community service. Very controlled. So you're either very controlled or very silly. And I want to get your guys' take on that.
You know what, Andy? I'm really glad you brought up the thing with the radio stations. And one, first of all, it's a very deliberate steering of our collective awareness towards the silly, the mundane, the unimportant. But on top of that, one thing that I want to talk about that I noticed here is that for a long time, a very popular, a very successful radio station in the greater Phoenix area, and I witnessed personally from years of experiential knowledge of being it, of living it. This is a very popular radio station, and then all of a sudden, nothing, gone. It was the alternative rock station, and I have always strongly suspected that radio station was decided somewhere by some powers that be, by some agency, to have it taken off the air as a preemption, as a preemptive move against what those disc jockeys, against what the people related to that radio station would possibly express, especially about 9/11. It was the alternative rock station, and it was more so. It was the views expressed by those more so of, say, an alternative culture, a more progressive thinking trend, if you know what I mean. So I always thought that it was really interesting that such a popular, very successful radio station that was across the entire Greater Phoenix area, all of a sudden done. And I've suspected that it was a preemption against the alternative view that they would express about politics, but namely, very specifically, 9/11. The timing was about the same.
Well, it's just, I noticed this overall, is that young people, they got a lot of energy. I mean, and I know this, folks. I'm not an old man or anything. I just turned 36 last week, though, and I do notice a difference between the way I feel now and the way I used to feel when I was your guys' age. But, you've got the energy to make things happen, to start revolutions, not even necessarily violent ones, but, you guys aren't old enough to have the weight of the world crush your soul and tell you that you're not good enough. You guys still know you have that power. And there's a lot of adults who know that too, but some people forget they have that power. A lot of people forget they have that power as they go along life. And so I don't know. I try not to prescribe motives to giant entities or to individuals I don't know without knowing what's inside their head. But it just seems that you have this entire culture being motivated towards silly, ridiculous acts, towards things that are destructive even to their own personal development. So, I mean, I don't know. I was just curious about your guys' opinion on that.
Yeah, absolutely. It's deliberate, and it's been an ongoing campaign for a long time. It's important. All the matters of geopolitical global control are a big deal to very powerful individuals who take it very seriously, and in that is, and a hugely, if not the most important aspect of all, is the social control, the mind control of it, collectively controlling what the masses think and feel. And so it's a very realistic factor. If I like, that's the most important one, which is a big deal to the individuals carrying all these kinds of things out. So yeah, it's huge, and it's very coldly, calculatingly deliberate. These are real conversations with real individuals with real addresses discussing how to effectively most make us stupid, make us dumb, make us unaware, frivolous, childlike. So yeah, it's all real, and it's planned out. It's been happening over a long time. It may be the most important aspect of the whole thing. We'll let the masses think. Social control, mind control.
Now, I want to ask you guys this. I want to have you all each answer if you can. How has waking up to 9/11, the truth of 9/11, impacted your life and your plans for the future? We'll start with Steve.
Well, the reason why I volunteer for this organization is because learning the truth about 9/11 changed the way I think about everything. It made me realize that the news media cannot be trusted, neither can the political powers that be. And it also helped put into perspective our foreign policy and the rumors around the world that we are hated for different reasons. Maybe it's not because of our freedoms, but maybe it's because of our intervention and corruption. And so for me, the truth changed everything, and that's why my goal is to wake more people up to that truth. And I feel like I was personally lied to, by our government and by the media,
Which you were?
which I was, and I was duped, and I really hate that. I really hate being blatantly lied to my face, and so I think it's vital to wake people up to this truth as a door or a window into the rest of to all other mistruths and craziness happening in our world.
Dorian, same question. How has waking up to 9/11 impacted your plans for the future?
Well, kind of looking at the bigger picture in terms of what we can see in the trends of history and ultimately how tyranny is enforced through the channels of the military-industrial complex, which is through, banking, central banking, and defense contracting, pharmaceutical and illegal drugs. These various different components of the machine, and seeing how ultimately the way it has worked to benefit the few at the expense of the many. And so just looking at how these things are enforced and seeking to be the change that we want to see, and just doing simple things to bypass those means by which tyranny is enforced through the cost of energy, for example, by refusing to participate in Western medicine as much as possible, by not, buying into things like pharmaceutical drugs, by declaring yourself tax exempt. These things, because if everyone was aware of the way things really operate, and they knew of simple ways to bypass them by closing their bank accounts and working with a credit union or a smaller local bank, doing these things. If everyone was doing that, then the tyrannist's gig would be up, and it's ultimately like we're on a tipping point globally, because I feel like global communication now, ideas spread so rapidly across the globe, and there's this community, the underground community, which should be, reaching a point at which it's this tipping point of where these ideas that are commonly held are going to become accepted in the mainstream, because it's something that's going to be forced into the minds of the collective just by the fact that there's a certain percentage, a growing percentage, at which the notion is held by individuals in the population. It's the 100th monkey effect, if you will.
Now, Raj, how about yourself? How has waking up to 9/11 changed your plans for the future?
Seeing 9/11 happen and afterwards realizing the truth, and doing research on my own, I found that this is not the first time that people have been duped. This has been happening again and again, and I feel like we have a chance to reach out to people, and so that this kind of event does not happen again later. And because this event is still kind of fresh, and as regards to the bigger plan, it is to make people realize that they have the power, they are in charge, and they decide what happens to their lives. So it is to make people realize this. And as regards to the personal ambitions and all, that hasn't changed all that much, but I am more of a skeptic now, and which is good, because you just don't believe anything which anyone says. You have to find out what is the truth. So that's it.
Absolutely, I couldn't agree any more. And Edward, you're going to have the final thought on this. Well, how has this changed your plans for the future, waking up to 9/11?
I'm really glad you asked this question, because it made me
think about it in this way, which I haven't before. And doing so made me realize something really beautiful, which is that in an important way, it hasn't. I still have the same drives, the same desires, the same dreams. You know, I'm still enthused about what it was I wanted to do before. And, you know, finding out about everything, I went through such a period of shock, of terror, at really honestly looking the reality of the circumstances which would govern my life. And so now that I finally gotten over that, like I said, I'm glad you asked this question, because it made me realize that it hasn't changed the important things. I still have the same dreams. I'm still enthused about the same things in life. It's only added to what I've planned. I wasn't, you know, when I was 16, when I was 17 years old, I wasn't anticipating standing somewhere at Arizona State University, handing out flyers, waking people up to this kind of stuff. But when I think about it, I couldn't have picked out a more beautiful life for myself. This is exactly what I would want to do, where I would want to be. So it hasn't changed anything. It's only created more plans and having to deal with life, honestly.
Well, I am looking forward to the future you guys are going to be creating here in the world, and not just you guys, but everybody in this audience, everybody that is listening. Look, we are part of interesting times, to say the least. Not times that we would have chosen for ourselves had we been given the choice, but here we are. This is a situation that presents itself to us, and America is rising to the challenge. And I've said it so many times before. You know, America is not the wars that we've won, or presidents on Mount Rushmore, or, you know, the Eli Whitney and the Cotton Gin. It's us. It's the people who make up day-to-day life here, who make up the culture, who make up all of the great progress. When I talk about progress, I don't mean giant skyscrapers in the horizons either. I'm talking about progress towards waking up, towards enlightenment, towards bettering ourselves as the human race, becoming more like some kind of more superior species than we already are. So, you know, this is all part of it. I think it's some kind of strange cosmic way that we're being presented this challenge, and little by little we are meeting this challenge. Not the so-called leaders and representatives that are given to us in Washington and on TV, but in all of the people whose names you hardly ever hear of here on the internet or out there on the street handing out pamphlets and flyers.
Yeah, it's a beautiful era in history, indeed. But I wanted to add one more thing. I want to invite any listeners to like our page on Facebook, which is the 9/11 Studies and Outreach Club at ASU.
Yeah, we have 1,100 likes on there now, so an extra boost would help. It's kind of I think it's amazing that we've gotten to 1,100 likes. I remember when we first created the page, and I was one of the first persons to click like.
Well, we are going to have to leave it there. We'll link up your Facebook page in the description of this show, but we are out of time. Guys, thank you so much for coming on 9/11 Freefall.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
This show airs every Thursday night on No Lies Radio at 10 o'clock Eastern, 7 o'clock Pacific. You can also download MP3s of this show from the Internet Archive by going to 911freefall.com. This is Andy Steele saying have a great week and good luck.